Okay, well, this is going to be a short little video, I hope. And I'm doing this at school this morning, so if you hear some announcements coming on and things like that, that's just going to happen because I'm not going to redo. Okay, a couple of things. The next thing I want you guys to know is this area right here. We went through all the drawing, all the modifying. Now, this here represents all our layers. Before we go any further, you see this area here that says properties? I don't want you to touch these three things ever. Never change by layer, by layer, by layer. This here is what makes this work perfect. Now, what this is, let's click to Layer Properties. Now, when you have yours open, you're going to see yours is going to come popping up, and it is going to be much smaller. So please go ahead and put your mouse at the corner and expand it so you can actually see the whole thing. You want to be able to read this whole thing across, okay? Now, this is what runs your entire drawing. Now, think of it as layers, as in layers of like a sandwich. Okay, this is the status. If the green check is in front of it, that is the layer it's at. Right now, it always starts at layer 0. This means it's on. This means it's frozen. I'll explain these as I go through. Locked, the color, line type, line weight. And then there's transparency, and then if it's plotting or not. So let me show you how this works. Let's add a new layer. So we click right here, new layer. Whatever the layer was above it that was highlighted, it's going to duplicate it. So let's just say in this one, let's just call it object, O-B-J-E-C-T. You know how we have our object layers when we're doing our work. Now, we're going to keep it on, so that means we see it, and I'll explain this freezing in a minute. We're going to come over, we're going to leave this one white, and the line type is going to be continuous, but we're going to make this line weight, click on the word default, right there, and we're going to slide down and make this fatter, because this is our object line. So we've got that, and it's going to be plottable. So, now, while we're at it, let's come up here to layer 0. Now, our layer 0 is always going to be our construction layer. We don't ever want to see this. So we're going to make the color red. It's continuous. I'm going to leave the line weight as default because it's very, very thin that way. But I'm going to make it a no print layer. Okay? So if I went ahead and clicked new layer right now, this would copy right down here. So I'm going to click this object. Okay? So this one's highlighted. I'm going to click New Layer. Okay, now remember we have center lines. You may not like them, but we have center line. So I'm just going to call it Center. We're going to have it on, not frozen, open. And let's go ahead and make our center lines this green. Now check this out. Our center lines are not continuous lines. So click the word Continuous. Now, it's only giving us one line type, so let's load up some more. So since that is a center line, let's line up or load up center. See plain old center right here? And tell it OK. Pick center again and OK. So you just have to click that. Now the line weight. The object line was a 0.6, but this line weight here should be thinner. So let's go ahead and do that as a 0.3 because it is dark and it is thin. And we want it printable. Now, let's add up another one now. Let's go to new layer again. And let's call this one your hidden. Remember, I showed you what a hidden line looks like? And let's go ahead and take this one and turn it to this cyan color, this light blue. Now, hidden lines are not like center lines. We need to come here again and load up. And we're going to come down to just regular old hidden right there. And they're alphabetized. And tell it OK. And let's make our hidden lines the same as 0.3 there. Okay. Now you can add some more layers and you can pick some more line types. I really don't care. This is for you to play around with to understand. Okay. Now we've got these all loaded up and I'm going to explain what these on and freeze and lock do. Okay. I'm going to close this out. Now check this out. This all of a sudden is turned red and look over here. It's red, but it still says by layer. So that's the key, by layer, by layer, by layer. Okay, now, in the other videos, I told you to turn this little guy on right here. See this little guy here, show hide line weight off? And if you don't have that, if you come to customization, it is right here. You check on line weight. That little box will show up, and I'll explain how that works. Now see, we're in 0. Let's come up here and just draw some silly lines. Okay, don't be too excited. Yes, it's all red. Okay? Now, let's come up here, hold this down, and let's go to center. And let's come in here and draw some lines. Look, long, short, long. And notice I'm not in any command, so now I can come down here and change again. Hidden. Now, if you're doing this and you're not seeing these lines look this way, it could be one of two things. One, you could be zoomed in so close that when you go to draw your line, it's not looking like it. And the reason is, look how tiny that line is. Or you could be out so far that you can't see it either. So this is just normal size. So we have object. Okay, so now you have that. So you're saying, okay, we made all these different sizes. Why don't I see them? The reason is right here. See this show hide line weight? If I turn this on just by picking it, boom, you can see the different sizes of these lines. So that's how this works. Now, I find it difficult to draw with the line weights on like this, but you may like it. That's going to be up to you. Now, the purpose for this is very simple. What if you're working on a drawing and say I'm in my object layer? That's the object layer I need to be in. And all this other stuff that's in my way, I don't want to see it. If I come here to freeze and I freeze off these other layers, now I can't freeze myself off if I'm in an object. I'm frozen off. And you're saying, oh gosh, where to go? It's all right there. I click this and it thaws out. Okay? Now, what's the difference between on and frozen? When this thing is the sunshine, when you freeze it and it turns to the snowflake, you can't do anything with it. It won't print, you won't see it, you can't draw on it, nothing. But when you come down to these others with the light bulbs, they turn blue. And in the past, you weren't allowed to draw on those layers. But now it's going to ask you, and if you get in there, see what I'm doing here? I'm just drawing line all over the place, correct? Well, if I come back here and turn this on, I got a whole lot of garbage up there. So unfortunately, in the on-off, you still can work in it. At least they're giving you a reminder on it. All right, now some other things. Okay, say for some reason that you worked yourself silly and you realize, oh goodness, this line and this line really need to be on the center line layer. Well, if you just pick these two, select them, come up here and go to center and hit escape, you dropped it on there. That is the whole reason this is to say by layer, because if you switch these up, these will not allow these layers to work. Now, with these layers here, if for some reason you happen to see, such as like see the object, notice how white and bold it is. If I click the lock, see how it turned gray? Now, with that lock, I can go on here and, oops, let me put myself in that layer. I can come in here and draw on this layer all I want. Not a problem. But you know what? I can't get rid of it or delete it. I can't do anything that's on a lock layer except add to it. Okay? So that's the deal with lock. So get used to that. You don't want to really mess around with that. So this is your layer information. Okay? This can be a lot of fun. We are going to have another lecture later on that is going to deal with this layer states. And this is when we're going to get into our printer. And that'll be fun for you. Now, the next thing I want you to do at this point is I want you to learn how to save. When you go to save, I want you to come up here. You either can come through this way, save, or in this quick access toolbar. If you've never saved before, you could just hit save or save as. If something's already been saved and you want to save it as a different name, then make sure you go save as. So I'm just going to click to start save as. Now it comes here. I really can't show you too well, but I want you to find where it says your student drive. Okay, it's going to have your number and it's going to have an S. Even though mine reflects a U, that's just the way the school has it set up. So I want you to find your student drive, okay? So you'll go to your student drive, and that's where you're going to save it to. If you're not sure of it after you save it, you should see up here, and it should have an S colon, and then whatever your name is. You can save this off as practice, whatever, so you've got some objects up there and things like that. Now, a couple of other quick things, okay? Now, down here in the status bar, some of you guys have asked me already. See this little guy right here? This is your grid. It's F7. It puts your grid on. It puts your grid off. I personally don't like the grid because I don't use the grid. So this is how you turn your grid off and on, okay? The one next to it is our snap, not our object snap. There's a difference. This object snap actually, let me come up here to our settings, actually snaps to all these special specified areas. So that object snap is one thing. But this little snap, let me show you what it does. This almost reminds me of Microsoft Word or Excel when you're doing a drawing. So if I put the grid on and I put this snap on, what it does is when I come in here, you will see my mouse. Look at it. It's moving all jerky. It makes you snap to the grid. And yes, you can go in there and change things all you want. But this is good if you're doing something quick and you're not sure about numbers. But 9 times out of 10, we're going to have numbers. So this grid, this is not going to help you. To change this up, and notice regular snap is F9. If we go to snap settings, it's here. You can change your snap setting. You can change your grid settings. And oh, by the way, see snap and grid, object snapped, that's where it is. I'm going to get you into this polar tracking later because that takes a little bit getting used to. And once you understand polar tracking, you're going to love it. So down here, to get rid of the grid, you can pick it this way. You can go on, or this one's F7. So I'm going to turn that off. See the snap? That's F9. I'm going to turn it off. If it's not blue, it's going to be off, okay? This is your dynamic input. This one here is if you turn it off or on. This is your F12 key, your function key, F12. That allows you, when you're coming in here, when you're picking your line, see there's no instructions there? If I hit my F12 and watch right here, you'll see it'll turn blue, F12. Now my numbers come right here up on the screen. So that's dynamic input, very important, okay? The next one after that, here is your ortho. This is your F8. So remember, if you hit your F8, you're going to have it straight. Hit F8 again, it turns back to a rubber band. So F8 toggles you off and on. This one here is your polar tracking. This is F10. This one, like I said, I'll do another video on this one. It's a phenomenal one, but I'll do that when you're used to this a little bit more. This ISO draft, I will teach you this. Normally I haven't in the past because it's really not useful since we do so much in 3D, but I think you might like this. This is your show snapping reference line. This is object snap tracking. I like this one a lot. If this one, and this is your F11, if you turn this one on, what happens here is something as simple as if I want a line, and say I want a line from the end point of here, I just hover, okay? And then I want from the end point here, see how the green? It'll let me come right to that. So I've got the intersection of this to the intersection. You just hover and it'll actually pick it up. So you just have to go over the 2 points. It'll hover and then it'll take you so you've got the intersection on where you need to draw it. So this takes a little practice, but it's great. This one here you know well. It's your object snap. It's F3. This one here is your show or high line weight, which is great. Now all of these here I'll deal with annotate, and this is a scale. You don't have to worry about this right now. We'll leave it the way it is. This here shows our workspace switching. This is switching us from doing 2D to 3D. Please stay in the 2D where you're at. The monitor, leave this alone. This little guy right here is super helpful. I know you use things with objects, but what if, up in this layer area, what if, you needed something in the red, but you needed just 1 or 2, you didn't need all of them. If we froze it off, we couldn't see them. But if we come up to here, this, we can go isolate or hide. If I say hide, I can say, okay, you know what? I want to see just a couple of these red lines, and these red lines I don't want to see. These are in my way. I can choose the ones I want, right click, they're gone. I didn't erase them, they're just gone. I come back here, end object isolation, they're back. If I come here and I go isolate, and I say, hey, I only want to keep this stuff right here, that's what I want to see, I just choose what I want, everything else goes away. And once again, I can end, and they all come right back. As far as this, the acceleration, that's fine, and you're not really going to need to worry too much about this. So I've given you a bunch of information right there at this point. There are several more things we need to go through, but I would like you, after finishing this video, please create some layers like I did. Use all your draw commands, your modify commands. We are going to get into the next video is going to be our actual format. We're going to make our format where we're going to have specific layers. We're going to do some annotation. I'll explain that. We'll go through some other things, but this is really important, okay? Now, the last thing I want to teach you is this array. I'm going to do this as a separate, all by itself lecture because this one has a lot of cool stuff too and it can be really helpful. So hopefully you're going to pick all that up and deal with it, and we should be good to go. All right? All right, that's the end of, oh goodness, part 5.